Good morning. The Committee on Homeland Security Subcommittee on Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Protection will come to order. The subcommittee is meeting today to receive testimony regarding the current state of the Department of Homeland Security's efforts to secure federal networks. I recognize myself for an opening statement. I see cybersecurity as one of the preeminent domestic and national security policy challenges of our generation. And as the chairman of the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Protection Subcommittee, I feel especially grateful for the opportunity to work with other members on this panel to have a direct impact on the cybersecurity posture of our country. This is a duty that we do not take lightly. Oftentimes, the American people hear about committees performing oversight, and they think there is this misguided perception that we're simply performing a routine checkup, taking the temperature, if you will, and then moving on. That mindset isn't what compels us to meet here today. Today's oversight is one of committed, ongoing engagement. Securing federal networks is, and rightfully should be, one of the central priorities of this subcommittee, of this committee, of this Congress, and for the American people. While today's hearing represents a small, public-facing sliver of this engagement, my commitment to all stakeholders impacted by this important issue is that our continued efforts to improve the security of our federal networks will be conducted in a manner that fully recognizes the seriousness of the threats posed by our cyber adversaries. And while the stakes are indeed high, this subcommittee is uniquely positioned to be part of a solution. After all, the Department of Homeland Security is required by law to play a vital and central role in the federal government's policies, procedures, and operations for cybersecurity of our federal agencies. Specifically, DHS is entrusted with carrying out important legislative priorities established by the Cybersecurity Act of 2015 and the Federal Information Security Modernization Act of 2014, often referred to as FISMA. Ensuring the effective execution of the Department's cybersecurity initiatives has never been more important than it is today. Just last week, the committee heard from a panel of experts about the evolving cyber landscape. Retired General and National Security Advisor Keith Alexander noted, "Our increasing reliance on digital connected devices means that while tanks, bombers, and fighter jets are certainly not obsolete, there are newer and perhaps more insidious ways of having similar effects without the need for large investment of those assets require." Bad actors are continuing to compromise the network security of both the public and the private sectors at an alarming rate. From nation-states like Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea, and criminal organizations, our systems are regularly attacked, and the federal government must be more effectively and more efficient in anticipating these threats and do a better job of protecting itself and the vast troves of sensitive information on its networks. According to law, DHS is required to provide intrusion detection and prevention capabilities to federal agencies and to work with the Office of Management and Budget to administer the implementation of agency information security policies and practices. The Department must include advanced network security tools in its efforts to continuously diagnose and mitigate cybersecurity risks. Additionally, DHS has the authority to issue binding operational directives to federal agencies in order to safeguard federal information and information systems. The Department's perimeter defense capabilities, known as Einstein, have progressed from monitoring to detection to actual prevention capabilities. A pilot is underway to examine detection technologies beyond signature-based detection as required by the Cybersecurity Act of 2015. And while questions about the timeline of full deployment of Continuing Diagnostics and Mitigation Program, or CDM, phases loom, breaking down initial barriers to provide agencies with real-time situational awareness and risk-based accountable information is imperative to our federal cybersecurity efforts. I look forward to hearing from our witnesses today about the current status of these programs and how they will provide greater security for federal information technology systems when they are fully deployed. In today's ever-changing cyber threat landscape, we need to ensure that these programs are agile enough to keep pace with the cybersecurity needs of our federal agencies. We need to ensure that DHS is properly leveraging private sector innovation and is able to quickly adopt cutting-edge technologies. We need to ensure that there is a comprehensive strategy in place, not only to engage every executive branch agency and department, but also to ensure coordinated deployment. The federal government requires the American people to submit sensitive information to its care, private financial information to the IRS, personal medical records to Medicare or to the VA. We often adopt a trust us approach, but if we require that, then I firmly believe we must take serious steps to demonstrate our trustworthiness with that information. I look forward to a productive conversation with this distinguished panel of witnesses. Working together, we can continue to strengthen DHS's cyber capabilities to secure our federal networks. Chair now recognizes the ranking minority member of our subcommittee, the gentleman from Louisiana, Mr. Richmond, for his opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to the chairman of the full committee and the ranking member of the full committee for being here. I want to begin by thanking you for holding this hearing on one of our nation's most pressing Homeland Security challenges, and that's securing the .gov domain. Americans rely on federal agencies to safeguard some of our most sensitive national data, from health records and Social Security numbers to intelligence and information on our troop movements. This information may be exposed or exploited by something as simple as a careless employee or a failure to patch a known vulnerability. This information can just as easily be taken or altered by criminal networks and, as we discussed last week in this committee, state-sponsored hackers. The Russian attacks this past year on our democratic processes and political institutions are a salient reminder of the damage state adversaries like Russia can inflict. Just last year, GAO surveyed agencies with high-impact systems, those that hold information so sensitive that a breach could cause catastrophic harm to individuals, the government, or the nation. The survey showed that cyber attacks from state actors represented the most serious and frequent threat these agencies faced. This same team of GAO analysis, one of whom we have with us today, revealed that from 2006 to 2015, the number of cyber attacks on federal agencies went from about 5,500 per year to 77,000. That's a 1,300% increase. We also know that our government networks have not only been targeted, they have also been infiltrated. Successful cyber attacks have been carried out against the Office of Personnel Management, the Internal Revenue Service, and the Departments of State, Defense, Veteran Affairs, and Health and Human Services, just to name a few. To be clear, there is no one-size-fits-all or a silver bullet for securing federal networks. That said, there are some positive signs that current efforts may be having an impact. A recent report from the Office of Management and Budget shows that over the last year, the number of cyber attacks on the United States government networks have gone down, not up, for the first time in a decade. I'm also interested to hear from DHS and GAO on the extent to which this downward trend may be attributable, at least in part, to greater adoption of the Einstein program by federal agencies. I also look forward to hearing from this panel about how DHS is working with its federal partners to deliver cybersecurity services that are vulnerable, affordable, valuable, affordable, and effective. With that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank the gentleman. The chair now recognizes the chairman of our full committee, my colleague from Texas, Mr. McCall, for an opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and ranking member. I want to thank the subcommittee for the good work that you've been doing, not only last Congress, but I know we have a lot of work to do this Congress. I look forward to that. Just last week, our committee heard from top former cyber and national security officials, including General Keith Alexander, that we must rise to the challenge in combating growing cyber risks and that we must up our game on our defense. We heard about the wide range of cyber threats we face from nation states, hacktivists, and criminals. Russia meddled in the 2016 presidential election, and Russian intelligence agents were indicted in the massive breach of Yahoo. North Korea attacked Sony Pictures. Iran hit the financial sector. China continues to be one of the nation's top cybersecurity threats. And as we all remember, in 2015, Chinese hackers stole 20 million security clearances, including my own and many in this room, in a breach at the Office of Personnel Management. Recently, the alleged hack of the CIA has WikiLeaks publishing over 8,000 pages of documents with some of the most highly sensitive cyber weapons. These blinking red alarms are the reason we are here today. We need to ensure that our federal departments and agencies are properly defended from attacks. We do not have time to wait. Over the last several years, I've championed a number of bills out of this committee that put DHS in the lead for operational control and to operationally secure the .gov domain, helping to better protect critical infrastructure, hiring cyber talent at MPPD, being the hub for the cyber threat information sharing, and providing voluntary assistance to the private sector. In late 2015, the Cybersecurity Act became law and included language authorizing DHS to deploy intrusion detection and prevention capabilities and to support its continuous diagnostics and mitigation endeavors across the federal civilian enterprise. This law requires federal agencies to utilize the intrusion detection and prevention capabilities, and at the end of last year, the department announced it was providing cybersecurity services to 93% of the executive branch's civilian workforce. But perimeter detection is only one part of what needs to be a larger part and more holistic defense in-depth strategy and architecture. DHS must adopt an entire suite of tools and technologies while ensuring its capabilities are keeping up with the evolving cyber threats that we discussed at last week's hearing. As I mentioned last week, this committee will be moving legislation soon to create a stronger, consolidated cybersecurity agency at the Department of Homeland Security. This proposal will elevate the cybersecurity mission at DHS at a critical time and further enhance cyber operations, including those to more effectively secure federal networks. This will help step up our cyber defense efforts and attract top talent, as we've already begun to work with DHS and others to make that a reality. So I want to thank the Chair and Ranking Member for holding this hearing, and I look forward to seeing the testimony. With that, I yield back.
Thank you, Chairman. The Chair now recognizes the Ranking Minority Member of the full committee, the gentleman from Mississippi, Mr. Thompson, for his opening statement.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I welcome our suite of witnesses here today. I look forward to the testimony. Cyber attacks against federal networks and the nation have been increasing in frequency in recent years, with high-profile breaches of federal systems at the White House, State Department, Veteran Affairs, and the Office of Personnel Management. These breaches, many of which are believed to be carried out at the direction of state actors, have called into question the ability of the federal government to adequately secure its data and networks. For instance, there was a massive OPM breach that occurred 2 years ago. In that attack, the personnel records of at least 22 million people were stolen. These records included very sensitive and personal information about not just federal employees and contractors, but also about their families and friends. Hackers believed to be the working for the Chinese government carried out this malicious attack. Last week, the committee heard from national security experts about the growing and gathering threat posed by state actors, most notably China, Iran, North Korea, and Russia. I was struck, however, by the testimony of Dr. Frank Salufo from the George Washington University, who characterized the threats posed by these countries in the following way. Russia is the most capable. China is very active in computer network exploit, or espionage activity, and North Korea and Iran are the most likely to turn to computer networks attacks to damage our systems. With respect to Russia, the threat posed by Vladimir Putin has become a kitchen table topic. Americans want to know more about the cyber hacking and influence operation that Putin directed against our democracy in the lead up to the 2016 elections. They also want to know if there are any collusion between U.S. persons and Russian operatives to carry out what FBI Director James Comey has called a successful operation. These are not minor or trivial concerns. The Russians, as Director Comey has determined, are proud to have sown doubt about the nature of our democratic process, and because they were successful, he warned that they will be back. Mr. Chairman, I was pleased to hear you acknowledge at last week's hearing that these actions by Russia were an invasion of the privacy of citizens and that they undermine our democratic institution and elections. Given that the House Intelligence Committee's bipartisan inquiry seems to be unraveling at the hands of its chairman, now is the time for members of Congress, regardless of party, to stand together in support of a nonpartisan commission, one akin to the 9/11 Commission. Turning back to the witnesses before us today, I look forward to hearing from the panel on how DHS is progressing in its federal cybersecurity role and what more can be done within DHS and across the federal government to better mitigate, respond to, and recover from attacks on federal information systems. With that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank the gentleman. Other members of the committee are reminded that opening statements may be submitted for the record. We are pleased to have a very distinguished panel of witnesses before us today on this most important topic. Ms. Jeanette Manfra is the Acting Deputy Undersecretary for Cybersecurity in the Department of Homeland Security. Welcome. Mr. Greg Wilshusen is the Director for Information Security Issues for the United States Government Accountability Office. Good to see you again, Mr. Wilshusen. And Mr. Chris Chakarian is an analyst for the cybersecurity policy for the Congressional Research Service. Welcome. I now ask all of you to stand and raise your right hand so I can swear you in to testify. Do each of you swear or affirm that the testimony which you will give today will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Let the record reflect that each witness has answered in the affirmative. You may be seated. The witnesses' full written statements will appear in the record. The chair now recognizes Ms. Manfra for 5 minutes for her opening statement.
Thank you, sir. Chairman Ratcliffe, Ranking Member Richmond, Chairman McCall, Ranking Member Thompson, and members of the committee, thank you for today's opportunity to discuss DHS's efforts to secure federal networks. Cybersecurity remains one of the most significant risks facing the United States. Working with Congress, we have focused on a range of actions to confront this evolving challenge. By law, federal agencies have responsibility for their own cybersecurity. Our goal is to protect agencies against cybersecurity incidents and to help each agency effectively safeguard their own systems and networks. We achieve these goals in 4 ways. 1, by providing a baseline of security for civilian agencies through the National Cybersecurity Protection System, or NCPS, and the Continuous Diagnostics and Mitigation Program. 2, by conducting risk assessments and directing agency action as needed. 3, by serving as an information sharing hub. And 4, by providing incident response assistance. Our first focus area is identifying, prioritizing, and enabling mitigation of cybersecurity threats facing civilian agencies through NCPS, of which Einstein is the principal component. Recognizing the importance of Einstein, Congress mandated that all civilian agencies fully implement the system, resulting in an increase in Einstein 3 accelerated coverage from 38% to 93% over the past year. We are working with the remaining civilian agencies to facilitate full participation. We recognize that many sophisticated adversaries cannot be blocked by signatures of known threats. NCPS is a platform, and Einstein is only a first step. Moving forward, we are pursuing 3 lines of effort. First, increasing the number of known cyber threat indicators available. Second, deploying reputation scoring to help government agencies prioritize specific indicators based upon the likely severity of the threat. And third, piloting an advanced analytics capability to identify anomalous activity that could be a previously unknown threat. Effective cybersecurity must address threats, but agencies must also identify and fix known vulnerabilities. Through the Continuous Diagnostics and Mitigation, or CDM program, DHS provides federal civilian agencies with tools to gain visibility, often for the first time, into the extent of cybersecurity risk across their entire network and prioritize identified issues. DHS also conducts risk assessments based upon a standardized methodology and informed by an understanding of relevant threats. In fiscal year 2017, we are continuing to focus on the most critical systems. DHS leveraged the authorities in the Cybersecurity Act of 2015 to issue a binding operational directive mandating that agencies participate in our high-value asset assessment process and fix identified vulnerabilities within 30 days. Cybersecurity threats are constantly changing as our adversaries implement new tactics, techniques, and procedures. Recognizing this fact, Congress established our NCIC as the civilian hub for cyber threat indicators and defensive measures with federal and non-federal entities. As required by the Cybersecurity Act of 2015, we automated the sharing of our cyber threat indicators while protecting privacy and civil liberties. Persistent adversaries will find ways to infiltrate networks. When an incident occurs, our NCIC offers assistance to find the adversary, drive them out, restore critical services, and improve security moving forward. In closing, while we've made progress, we must do more to confront the continually evolving threats facing our nation. This commitment to do more is at the core of the pending DHS cybersecurity strategy. This administration is committed to making significant investments in cybersecurity and modernizing our federal IT infrastructure. In the FY18 budget blueprint, the President requested $1.5 billion for DHS to safeguard cyberspace. The Department views the IT modernization effort as an opportunity to review the current approach to federal network security and potentially make generational advances in the capabilities we offer. We must also ensure that DHS is appropriately organized to address cybersecurity threats, and we appreciate the Chairman of the Committee's leadership in working to reauthorize the Department. As the committee considers these issues, we are committed to working with Congress to ensure a homeland that is more safe, secure, and resilient. Thank you for the opportunity to testify, and I look forward to any questions you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Manfra. Chair now recognizes Mr. Will Shusen for 5 minutes for his opening statement.
Chairman Ratcliffe, Ranking Member Richmond, Ranking Member Thompson, and members of the subcommittee. Thank you for the opportunity to discuss DHS's efforts to secure federal computer networks. As recent cyber attacks have illustrated, the need for robust and effective cybersecurity has never been greater. Today, I will focus on 2 of the department's programs, the National Cybersecurity Protection System, also known as Einstein, which is an intrusion detection and prevention system, and a Continuous Diagnostics and Mitigation program. But before I do, if I may, I would like to recognize members of my team who are instrumental in developing my statement and performing the work underpinning it. With me today is Mike Gilmore and Kush Malhotra. In addition, Jeff Knott, Angela Watson, Nancy Glover, and Scott Pettis also made significant contributions to the work. Mr. Chairman, as you know, several federal laws establish key government-wide roles for DHS with securing federal information systems. Consistent with these laws, DHS is leading the Einstein and CDM programs to assist federal agencies in protecting their computer networks and systems. Our work has highlighted the need for advances with these programs. In January 2016, we reported that Einstein was limited in its ability to detect malicious network activity because it could only match against known patterns of malicious data or signatures. It was unable to detect intrusions for which it did not have a valid or enabled signature deployed because it did not provide for an anomaly-based intrusion detection capability. Such a capability involves comparing current network activity against predefined baselines of normal network behavior to identify deviations which could indicate malicious activity. Einstein was also unable to detect exploits across all types of network traffic because it was not monitoring or had not deployed signatures related to certain types of network traffic. As a result, it would not have detected known malicious data embedded in such traffic. In addition, DHS's process for notifying agencies of detected malicious activity was not always effective, with disagreement among DHS and the 5 agencies we reviewed about the number of incident notifications sent and received and their usefulness. We made 9 recommendations to DHS for expanding or enhancing Einstein's capabilities, including those for detecting and preventing malicious traffic, notifying agencies of potential incidents, and developing guidance for routing network traffic through Einstein sensors. The department concurred with each of our recommendations and has stated that it has taken or is taking actions to implement them. The tools and services delivered through DHS's CDM program are intended to provide agencies with the capability to automate network monitoring, correlate and analyze security relevant information, and enhance risk-based decision-making at both the agency and government-wide levels. In May 2016, GAO reported that most of the 17 agencies we surveyed responded that they were in the early stages of CDM implementation. For example, 14 agencies reported that they had deployed products to monitor or scan hardware and software inventories, configuration settings, and common vulnerabilities. But only 2 had completed installation of dashboards at the agency or component level. We believe that the use of tools and of capabilities available under the CDM program, if effectively implemented by agencies, can help them to identify and resolve cybersecurity vulnerabilities in a prioritized and risk-based manner. In conclusion, Einstein and CDM offer the prospect of important advances in the security over federal systems. Enhancing Einstein's capabilities and greater adoption by agencies will help DHS achieve the full benefit of the system. An effective implementation of CDM functionality by federal agencies could better position them to protect their information technology resources from evolving and pernicious threats. Chairman Ratcliffe, Ranking Member Richmond, and Ranking Member Thompson, members of the subcommittee, this concludes my statement. I'd be happy to answer your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Wilshusen, and thanks to your team members for their work, as you recognized. Chair now recognizes Mr. Jaikaran. Did I say that right? For 5 minutes for his opening statement.
Chairman Ratcliffe, Ranking Member Richmond, Ranking Member Thompson, and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify on the current state of DHS's efforts to secure federal networks. My name is Chris Jaikaran, and I am an analyst in cybersecurity policy at the Congressional Research Service. In this role, I research and analyze cybersecurity issues and their policy implications. I have provided a written statement and will summarize that testimony with some brief remarks. My testimony today will address the legislation that Congress recently passed, the roles and responsibilities assigned by those pieces of legislation, and the policy outcomes from those pieces of legislation. During the 113th and 114th Congresses, 3 pieces of legislation were enacted that changed how federal network security is managed. The Federal Information Security Modernization Act of 2014, or FISMA, the National Cybersecurity Protection Act of 2014, and the Cybersecurity Act of 2015. My written testimony briefly summarizes the effect of this group of legislation on federal network security without addressing other cybersecurity concerns, such as the effects on the private sector. To take an organizational view, these laws establish certain roles and responsibilities among federal entities for the security of the .gov domain. It may be helpful to think of OMB as the strategic, DHS as the operational, and individual agencies as the tactical. OMB, exercising its oversight of agency budgets, oversees agency adoption of cybersecurity practices and ensures that agencies adopt a cybersecurity posture commensurate to their risk. DHS oversees agency adoption of cybersecurity programs, provides tools to protect agency networks, and coordinates government-wide efforts on federal cybersecurity. Individual agencies ensure that risks are effectively managed in their own agency, with cybersecurity being one such risk. In accordance with provisions in FISMA as amended, agency heads shall ensure that the responsibility for cybersecurity is delegated to a senior official, frequently a chief information security officer. The 113th Congress marked a shift in legislative policy concerning federal cybersecurity. Prior to the 113th Congress, cybersecurity risks were one of many risks that an agency head was statutorily required to manage. In managing these cybersecurity risks, their collective risk management equated to the security of the .gov domain. DHS, OMB, and NIST provided programs, information, tools, and guidance to assist agencies in managing that risk, to include FISMA guidance and Einstein. However, it was incumbent upon the agency head to accept those tools and implement that guidance. With the legislation enacted in the 113th and 114th Congresses, Congress further updated the law to reflect that risk exists not just at the agency level, but across the entire federal government. Federal agencies face risk not just for the information that agency possesses or the work that agency performs, but because that agency is an element of the federal government itself. The clarification of DHS's role in mitigating risk to all federal civilian agencies is the operationalization of that change. By consolidating these responsibilities at DHS, the intent is for DHS to monitor risk to the .gov domain and to take action to mitigate that risk, to detect malicious activity at one agency and prevent or mitigate that activity at another agency before it can become disruptive, a sort of herd protection for civilian agencies. This construct is also intended to free up agency resources to focus on mitigating the unique cybersecurity risks against agency networks and against agency information technology systems. This distinction between the federal enterprise and the agency's enterprise appears to be continuing in the new administration. Early indications from the administration officials signaled that the position of the administration is to manage risks to the federal enterprise as a single entity, rather than as distributed risk across all agencies. Shifting some additional cybersecurity actions from individual agencies to a single entity responsible for the security of all agencies is intended to allow those agencies to focus their resources on executing their respective missions. Binding operational directives are an example of the policy shift enacted with this group of legislation. These directives are issued by DHS and require an agency to take some action in order to protect the agency's information technology. This is a unique relationship wherein one cabinet-level agency can direct another to take action, in this case expend the agency's resources, for the purposes of managing risk to that agency or the federal government, but not risk to DHS. This concludes my brief remarks. Thank you for the opportunity to testify, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Jaikaran. I now recognize myself for 5 minutes for questions. Ms. Manfred, I want to start with you. As we've heard today, there have been a number of critiques of DHS's NCPS or its principal component, Einstein, and CDM and their capabilities over the last few years. So some of those critiques relate to the holistic effectiveness of the capabilities with respect to a cyber defense system, the lack of integration. We've heard some concerns about the program's limited ability to rapidly detect and disrupt breaches, and specifically Einstein 3A's signatures being limited and not being able to prevent some of the most advanced persistent threats. So what's your response to that? How do you address that? And what is DHS's mitigation to the extent you think those are valid? And I'll give Mr. Wilshusen and Mr. Jaikaran a chance to weigh in depending on your response.
Thank you for your question, sir. If I may separate the two programs, because I think the critiques are somewhat different. For the National Cybersecurity and Protection System, which Mr. Wilshusen summarized, the GAO report, we did concur with the recommendations from the GAO report. We've also done some independent studies as well within the department, leveraging MIT and Lincoln Labs to look at the system as well. And for National Cyber Protection System, if I may briefly review, it's made up of 5 capabilities. The first is on intrusion detection, which is Einstein 1 and 2. Those have been in place for quite a while. Those are unclassified capabilities that look at network flow and detecting known threats from traffic that is exiting and incoming to the network. Einstein 3A, as we refer to it, takes classified information encryption and uses it to protect unclassified data that is traversing in and out of the agency's network by partnering with the internet service providers that service those agencies. And the other two capabilities is the core infrastructure that supports everything that we do at within the National Protection and Programs Directorate and as well as our information sharing. And so the criticism is largely focused on Einstein 3 Accelerated, which is the focus on being able to deploy it quickly, and which we believe that was a valid criticism, and we were able to accelerate that deployment, and in cooperation with yourselves in the passage of the Cybersecurity Act that required agencies to deploy that, as I noted, we're now at 93%. So we believe that we are improving on the coverage aspect. We're still working to ensure that the classified indicators are as valuable as possible. And we continue to work with our partners in the intelligence community and with network owners and operators to ensure that not only are the indicators valuable, but as Mr. Wilshusen noted, that we and our analysts are providing appropriate context for agencies to understand what should they do once they do receive an alert. And so we're continuing to refine our processes there. On the lack of integration between CDM and Einstein, we also recognize that as a valid criticism, and we integrated the two programs so that they are now managed under one program director. And we believe that from a programmatic perspective, that has resolved a lot of the challenges. And then technologically, what we hope to achieve is as CDM is deployed and we gather insight on what is going on inside of the networks, that we then correlate that with the threat information and the data that we're receiving on what is going on that is going in and out of the agency networks and the network traffic, and that we will then be able to provide our NCIC and analysts with the holistic risk picture on both the vulnerabilities and the threat that our two major programs are seeing. But we also have looked to understand all of the available data sets for us and ensure that our analysts are taking advantage of those when they're providing that context.
Thank you, Ms. Manfra. So, Mr. Wilshusen and Mr. Jaikaran, you heard Ms. Manfra essentially confirm some of the critiques. Very quickly, the mitigation path that she outlined, do you think that's reasonable?
Yes, I do, and it's something that we've been working with DHS since we issued our report back in January 2016. It's been over a year, and we've been working with DHS and following their actions to implement our recommendations, and we will continue to do so until they are fully implemented.
So Ms. Manfra highlighted one of the challenges with sharing information. Once that information is shared, it's reliant on the recipient of that information to take some action. And that is the next step, that the work that the analysts will perform to help agencies take the action to remedy the cybersecurity threats.
My time's expired. I may have some additional questions in a follow-up round if we get the chance. But at this time, Chair now recognizes the ranking minority member of our subcommittee, Mr. Richmond, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is to Mrs. Manfra and Mr. Wilshusen. In past reports, GAO has underscored the need for a more strategic approach to cybersecurity within the Department of Homeland Security. I authored a law last year that required DHS to create such a strategy and submit it to Congress. Ms. Manfra, the statutory deadline for this strategy was March 23rd. What is the status of this strategy, and when should we expect to see it? And Mr. Wilshusen, are there areas where a DHS-wide cyber strategy, in your experience, will be beneficial to the department as it carries out its diverse cybersecurity mission?
Thank you for your question, sir. We are working on the cybersecurity strategy as required under the National Defense and Authorization Act, recognizing that it was due last week. However, we do need time to ensure that the new administration has an opportunity to review and provide guidance on what that strategy should look like. So we do anticipate that that will be over to you all soon, and we look forward to working with you on implementing that strategy.
Yes, I think the strategy should address several issues, including, of course, DHS's statutory responsibilities that it has with improving the security over the federal government. As part of that, it should also identify the resources, the staffing that will be needed to implement that strategy and perform the functions that have been laid out to it under law. And so certainly clearly identifying its roles and responsibilities and the resources necessary to perform those activities, such as CDM and Einstein, and the red and blue teaming exercises that it does, as well as the threat integration and information sharing activities should all be addressed in that strategy.
Ms. Monfort, do you have a estimate of how soon we would get it? A month, weeks?
Our goal is to get it within the next couple months, sir. But we do need to ensure that our leadership and the new administration has a chance to review it and provide the guidance. But sir, we are working very hard on it, and this is something that we recognize as critical to our success and the next evolution for DHS cybersecurity.
Thank you. And this is to the full panel, and you can answer them whatever order you want. One of the obstacles DHS encountered during the Obama administration was convincing other federal agencies to take advantage of DHS tools like Einstein and CDM. Mr. Jakaran, please explain how laws like the Cybersecurity Act of 2015 and FISMA have clarified agency responsibilities.
Thank you for the question, sir. Following the spat of legislation that was passed during the 113th and 114th Congresses, there was that change whereas agencies were offered the tools by the Department of Homeland Security. However, it was incumbent upon that agency head to accept that tool and deploy it upon their networks. After the change during the 113th and 114th Congresses, the acceptance of those tools, particularly the National Cybersecurity Protection System, or Einstein as the tools are known, was required. And you saw the change between the 30-some-odd% to the 90% adoption from agencies when Congress statutorily required agencies to deploy that technology.
I would agree. It had a very positive effect in compelling agencies to implement those programs.
Sir, I concur with the other two, and I would also note that it was able to remove a lot of the barriers that we had previous, some legal misperceptions that we had with agencies, so that further facilitated the adoption.
And a follow-up to that, from your perspective, how helpful have these laws been at raising the level of cybersecurity awareness across the federal government, and what are some of the most pressing challenges that still remain?
So I think the laws have been very effective in raising awareness amongst the federal leadership and the broader community that supports the federal government in securing our systems, whether they're commercial or inside the federal government. I think some of the major challenges continue to be how the federal government is able to modernize our IT systems, and being able to protect legacy IT systems is a continuing challenge, and it is resource intensive, which leads to the second challenge, which is resources, and being able to allocate sufficient resources to protecting that data and those systems that support that data continues to be a challenge.
And if you can answer this in like 2 seconds, just because you raised it, where are you all in the proposed budget? Are you all left alone, increased, or cut? With that, Mr. Chairman,
So you're referring to the FY18? The proposed budget blueprint does give us an increase at DHS.
Chair now recognizes the gentleman from New York, Mr. Donovan, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To follow up with my friend from Louisiana's questioning, you all spoke about the successes of the Cybersecurity Act of 2015 and the prior two pieces of legislation that came out of this committee and eventually passed the House and the Senate was signed into law. What else do you need? What would you like to see us do going forward now in helping you protect our data, our network infrastructure? What is it that you would like to see us do, this committee, our whole committee at Homeland Security, and all of Congress to do to help you do your job better?
Well, one thing I would say is to continue to shine a bright light on this issue, hold hearings, and have agency personnel come up here and testify on how they are implementing the requirements under these laws. and how effectively they are doing that. I think shining the light on that really raises the attention levels at the top levels of agencies, and that helps to get actions completed at those agencies. So that would be one of the areas to do. And I'll also point out that in another area where the laws have been beneficial is with the cybersecurity workforce assessment initiatives that have been specified in a couple laws for DHS specifically and across the federal government, where agencies are supposed to identify their critical cyber security talent gaps and take steps to fill them. So those are a couple areas where I think you have done a job to help improve security.
Echoing Mr. Wilshusen's comments, I would agree with those. In addition, I think work on acquisition reform is important. A lot of the challenges that we face in deploying and procuring best-in-class technologies is not just for DHS, but for the entire government is very important, and continuing to focus on building not just a federal workforce for cybersecurity, but a national workforce for cybersecurity that the federal government can benefit from.
So my fellow panelists have highlighted a range of policy options that are available for the Congress, and I think that is one of the unique areas of this space, cybersecurity, that issues of workforce, issues of IT acquisitions and modernization, issues of oversight all play into this issue of cybersecurity and our options for the Congress to consider moving forward.
Can you explain to me what the acquisition problems are that maybe we could address?
I think on for us, a lot of what we are looking at is, one, ensuring that we are leveraging the authorities that we currently have and improving our processes to ensure that those are as innovative and rapid as possible. And so we are making, and we're doing that work inside the department, encouraging other agencies to do the same. But I do believe that looking at processes that would enable faster tech refresh of our capabilities within the government and identifying opportunities to work with non-traditional government contractors. There are still some barriers in the way that the acquisition is currently written and done that doesn't allow us as easily and as rapidly to engage with those entities.
I think I would just add to it is kind of following the example what we're doing under CDM program, and that is leveraging government-wide demand for products to buy in volume, and so we're able to achieve cost efficiencies through volume discounts. So for many different types of information security related tools and capabilities, to the extent they can be acquired across the entire government, that all agencies can share, will be a very positive step, not only from a cost effectiveness view, but also from a standardization view too. That could also help allow for greater integration of the computing environments across the federal agencies.
I have nothing to add to the comments of my fellow panelists.
I have 30 seconds left, and I want you to understand you're speaking to a guy whose VCR still flashes 12. So in layman's terms, is there any laws that we could create for you that protects our data, protects our networks better? You seem very satisfied in what this committee, what this whole committee, what Congress has done so far in the area of cyber. Is there something that you would love to see us do?
From our perspective, sir, ensuring that DHS is organized to achieve our cybersecurity mission and renaming our organization so people understand what the National Protection and Programs Directorate is really very important for us, and we look forward to working with the subcommittee and the committee on that.
Thank you. My time has expired, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Chair now recognizes the gentleman from Louisiana, the ranking minority member of the committee, Mr. Thompson.
Well, I'll take Louisiana, but I'm from Mississippi.
Is there a difference?
Not really. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. All of you have talked about the capacity of having cyber experts within government. one of the criticisms we hear quite often is we don't have enough, or as soon as we get them, the private sector acquires them. I could use another term, but Ms. Mansfra, what do you think we need to do that we're not doing to recruit and keep cyber professionals within the federal government system?
Thank you, sir, for your question. This is something that is not only critical for us, but something that I personally care a great deal about. As a part of the broader initiatives to improve STEM education in the United States, I believe cybersecurity is an important component of that. And we at the department have done a lot of work to encourage universities and working with NSA and the NSF to have a common curriculum that universities will adopt, and developed a program with the Office of Personnel Management called the Cyber Corps Scholarship for Service that allows graduates of that program to work, benefit from a scholarship, and then come and work for either the federal, state, and local government. And that is one area that we have seen tremendous benefit from. And while they may leave the government after their time is up, we appreciate the time that they did spend with us. We also are looking in terms of the authorities that this Congress gave us to create an accepted service for cybersecurity. And we're moving forward in developing the components of that so that we can begin transitioning to that accepted service, which will allow us to drastically change how we can keep up with the marketplace on cybersecurity personnel. But we have, while we're working to implement that, we have worked to, within our current authorities, use what we can to retain the best and the brightest that we have right now by ensuring that with the tools that we have at the moment, to retain them and provide them with a better market-based approach to their salary. And there is more work to be done, but this is something that we have done a lot, and we look forward
Well,
to.
you've given me a broad response to my question. Let me tell you what I hear from a lot of government employees. They will say, because there's a private contractor with an employee sitting next to me, and as we talk, I find out that we're doing the same work, but that private contractor is probably making 1.5 times, if not more than my salary as a government employee. And so that impacts morale and a lot of other things. So do you hear that too?
Absolutely, sir. And the retention incentive program that we've put in place for now, while we work to implement the full accepted service, has actually had a drastic effect in reducing our attrition rate, so that we were at about a 13% attrition rate. We're now down to a 9%. And we think that that is commensurate with industry. We did absolutely hear that quite a bit, and we recognize that, and we are using our tools to.
Yeah, you know, we even said, go out and hire 1,000 people if you can find them, and plus up the department because you're short. I don't think we quite accomplished our goal. Maybe you can help me.
Yes, sir. Recruiting is still a challenge. We believe we've made progress on retention. We're also looking at innovative ways to recruit, and we do have some direct hire authority that we don't believe that we were fully leveraging. And so we worked with industry to look at how they recruit talent to the technology companies there, and we're looking at adopting a lot of those practices in our human capital process.
Well, I look forward to the next conversation, and you tell me how good we are moving in that direction.
Absolutely, sir.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Wolfson testified that the Einstein program is good if we know the malicious signatures. I guess the question is, what do we have as the alternative when we don't know what the signatures are? And maybe you can tell me, and then I'll go Mr. Wolfson.
Absolutely, sir. We think that, as I noted briefly, that there are 3 areas that we want to focus on. One is ensuring that we have better signatures. Signatures are still a useful capability to deploy, and so we want to ensure that have the best signatures that are available, and that we are using our private sector partnerships to both increase the quantity and the quality of those. We also want to ensure that the agencies understand how, whether it's not just a black or a white, this is either bad or this is good, but we want to look at those signatures and give them information about how likely the severity of the threat is, which we refer to as reputation scoring. And this is something that industry also uses. The third one is what we refer to as anomaly-based detection, and that is more challenging. The technology does exist in industry, and we are piloting it, but it is a challenging capability. We have seen success with some of our early pilots, and we look forward to understanding from those successes and learning from where the challenges were to fully deploy that capability.
So is that the pilot that we should have concluded last July?
The pilot was begun in early last year. We are still in the pilot phase.
So
But we've
still-
broadened the pilot, sir. One of the things that we need to continually be mindful of is our ability to scale technological deployment. So just because something might work at one agency, we need to ensure that it can scale for the entire civilian government. And so we expanded the pilot from that first agency to include others.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Gentleman from Mississippi yields back. Chair recognizes a gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Fitzpatrick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to the panel for being here. I'll start with Ms. Manfra and then second to the entire panel. The relationship with the FBI, would you describe it as one of cooperation, one of competition, or both, knowing that when there's multiple agencies in the same space, sometimes that can help and hurt? And second, for the panel, we repeatedly hear the same 4 nations mentioned through testimony here, Russia, China, North Korea, and Iran. How would you describe to this committee the uniqueness of each of those cybersecurity threats that each of those nations pose, and how would you rank them?
The question of the FBI cooperation, I'm very proud that I consider this an area of cooperation. Now, that doesn't mean to suggest that there aren't areas where we have different equities, but that is appropriate. And we believe that we have built the capabilities to work through those processes so that we ensure that they are able to pursue their investigative equities and we're able to pursue our network defense. And we have FBI sitting on the NCIC floor 24/7, and we routinely work with them to ensure that we are both aware of the same reporting streams, whether it's through their sources or through our partnerships, and that we are continuing to cooperate on mitigating and preventing potential incidents and working together to reduce the consequences should an incident occur. PPD 41, which was a policy that was delivered at the end of the last administration, laid out the doctrine that is still valid and that we still work under, where the FBI leads what we refer to as the threat response, and that is containing the threat, and where we lead what we refer to as asset response, which is working with the victims and understanding the broader risk and how we mitigate that, and we believe that works very well.
With respect to the 4 nations, I would say that Russia is very skilled, capable, and is probably more surgical in its intrusion capabilities and intents. China also has a lot of skills, but it takes a broader base view in trying to get into more different activities across the government and the economy. And I would just say probably Korea and Iran are more likely to be involved in more destructive activities if they had that capability.
Sir, unfortunately, my work at CRS has not provided me insight into the capabilities of each of the countries. However, I do have colleagues who do study threat actors specifically, and I'd be happy to get them in contact with you after this hearing.
Thank you. I yield back.
Thank the gentleman. Chair now recognizes the gentleman from Rhode Island, Mr. Langevin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank our witnesses for your testimony today, and most especially what you're doing to secure our networks against those who have bad intentions. So, Ms. Manfred, if I can start with you. So DHS was authorized by FISMA 2014 to use binding operational directives to issue mandatory instructions to agencies regarding cybersecurity policies, measures, standards, and guidelines. So far, how many of those binding operational directives have been issued? And can you also characterize the response of federal agencies to these directives and also identify where their enforcement can be improved?
Thank you, sir. We have issued 4 binding operational directives to date. We believe that they have been very effective. They were all delivered by former Secretary Johnson to his peers, which we do believe is part of the success of these directives. We made very deliberate decisions to do our best to issue binding operational directives that would enable us to measure their success in implementing those directives. And the first directive on reducing critical vulnerabilities and the one on high-value asset and participating in the high-value asset assessments, as well as closing some vulnerabilities related to later revelations of activity on with some criminal tools that were being used, have all been very effective. The critical vulnerability, we have excellent data that shows that not only are they closing those critical vulnerabilities, but they're reducing the time to close those vulnerabilities. And we gave them 30 days to close those critical vulnerabilities. Many of those vulnerabilities had been open for oftentimes more than a year. And we're now seeing a dramatic reduction in the amount of time that it is taking them to reduce those critical vulnerabilities, which we think is a demonstrable change in behavior and valid recognizing the value of those binding operational directives.
So in all 4 cases, the binding operational directive was satisfied and the agencies closed the vulnerabilities, addressed the problem?
Yes, sir, and we did not close the critical vulnerability because, or the high-value asset one, because those were ones where we wanted to continue to be able to measure them. And so we work with them, their Chief Information Officer and Chief Information Security Officer, to continue to provide them reports on the status, because we believe those are always valid directives for them to follow.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Wilshosen, has GAO studied the impact of binding operational directives issued by the Department?
We have not.
Okay. So, Ms. Manfra, we heard recently before the committee that the threat indicators shared by DHS often lack context that make private sector participants that they would help them desire to make them actionable. At the same time, developing such context takes time, and the development of the Cybersecurity Act of 2015, we heard that rapid sharing was essential. So how does the Department balance the competing needs of sharing actionable information with appropriate context against the desire to share quickly?
Thank you, sir, for that question. We believe that all of those are valid requirements. However, not all of our stakeholders require all of those various different capabilities. Our automated indicator sharing program is to get as much threat information out as quickly as possible in an automated way so people can ingest those indicators and protect themselves. And we believe that has been a successful program. We're about a year into it, and we have nearly 200 participants that are receiving indicators from us. Now, there's always feedback, and we appreciate the feedback in working to improve that program. We also have other programs to include providing private sector with clearances so that we can work with our intelligence community partners to provide classified briefings should the threat require it. And we also work with our cyber information sharing and collaboration program where we can do technical exchanges with analysts at industry organizations that have significant capabilities of their own where we can exchange broader information on context and refine what it is we're doing. And that's how we think of focusing our efforts.
So the people that we've been talking to, just to have some feedback, didn't think that the information sharing has been all that effective. and so we need to work harder in that area. I would ask you now if you have a secondary process. I mean, sharing quickly the indicators is important, and getting that out is important. But what about a follow-up and helping to share context in a second round?
Absolutely, sir. And one of the, similar to what we're doing with the federal agencies, is to help score some of these indicators, working with the private sector to ensure that we are providing both the quality quickly, and understanding that we may need to follow up either broadly with an entire sector or on specific entities that are being targeted to provide them with additional context so that they can make threat decisions. But we've heard similar feedback, and we understand from our partners that we are improving, but that we do need to continue to improve on this capability.
Thank you. I know my time's expired, but just in closing, Mr. Wilshues, and I hope that that GAO would look at these binding operational directives issued by the department, especially since we're only 4, and give us an assessment. It would certainly help the committee to decide whether the binding operational directive is meaningful or not. And we appreciate the testimony of Ms. Manfred, but I would.
I'll be happy to work with your staff to look at that.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
We have a number of members that have competing hearings this morning and haven't been able to make it back. So I know that they are going to have questions for all of you that will be submitted in writing. So with that, however, I will thank the witnesses for your testimony today. I want to thank the members for all their questions. As I said, members of the committee will have some additional questions, and we'll ask you to respond to those questions in writing, respectively. Pursuant to Committee Rule 7D, the hearing record will be held open for 10 days, and without objection, the subcommittee now stands adjourned.